The Detroit Pistons have, throughout their franchise history, been one of the more successful franchises in the NBA. As a team, they have won 3 NBA championships and are one of the most interesting and noteworthy teams of the late 80s to early 2000s. The late 80s saw the Detroit Pistons win 2 straight championships, 2 years in which they knocked out Michael Jordan out of the playoffs, and they were somewhat the team that ended up pushing Michael Jordan to that next point in his career in terms of getting over the hump and becoming the 6-time champion we know him as today. They're also probably one of the last examples of a defensive-minded team winning the NBA championship in 2003. A team with names like Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, and many other guys who made up a tough defensive-minded team were, like I said, the probably last team to be known as a defensive-minded team to win the NBA championship. In the 23-year stretch that spanned from 1986 to 2008, the Detroit Pistons, like I said, were one of the most successful franchises in the NBA. They had 3 finals wins, 5 finals appearances, 10 Eastern Conference finals appearances, and in 23 seasons, they only missed the playoffs 5 times. However, when you compare these numbers to where the Detroit Pistons have been in the last 12 seasons from 2009 to 2021, the story is completely different. They not only have 0 finals wins, appearances, or even Eastern Conference finals appearances, it took them only 12 seasons to exceed the amount of seasons without a playoff appearance than it did from the 86 to 08 run. In that 12-season stretch that includes this year, which has only been about 35 games for the Pistons up to this point, and a year last year where it got ended early, and a year in 2014, I believe that was a lockout year, the Detroit Pistons have 542 losses. And before the season, the Detroit Pistons were predicted by Vegas to win 23 and a half games, and actually that was the over-under in terms of how many games that they were going to win this year. And honestly, the bet of betting the under of 23 wins for a team in a 72-game season seems a little bit crazy before the season starts, but if we knew what we know now about the Detroit Pistons, 23 games might have actually seemed like a very generous number in terms of wins for this Detroit Pistons team this year. The biggest question about the Detroit Pistons and their very quick and very hard fall from being one of the best teams in the NBA to quite possibly and probably actually easily the worst franchise in sports is actually a very simple and very quick explanation. First things first, if the front office does a bad job in terms of trying to field talent and put together a solid franchise, then a franchise is just not going to work. And especially in the NBA where everything is very star-driven and everything is very player-driven, if you're not taking your due diligence and doing the best you can in terms of fielding good players for your roster, then your team is going to be exactly like how the Detroit Pistons are right now, and that's one of the worst franchises in the NBA. Let's start off with the most popular place to get a star player and to groom your own, I guess technically homegrown talent, is through the NBA draft. And if you want to take a look at the last 6 years for the Detroit Pistons in the NBA draft, you'll see names like Stanley Johnson, Henry Ellenson, Luke Kennard, Sekou Doumbouya, and Killian Hayes have been selected in the first round by the Pistons. Now, neither one of Stanley Johnson, Henry Ellenson, or Luke Kennard are on the Detroit Pistons anymore. And even when they were on the team, they were not effective in terms of bringing wins to this franchise. And when you compare each one of these picks to the players that came after them in the draft, it makes the pick of them being, selected at their spot even more questionable. In 2015, the Pistons took Stanley Johnson 8th overall. There were names like Miles Turner, Devin Booker, Terry Rozier, and Kelly Oubre Jr. taken, I believe, all within 7 picks after Stanley Johnson. And then in 2016, Henry Ellenson was selected with, I believe, the 15th pick in the 2016 draft. Names like Karis LeVert, Pascal Siakam, DeJounte Murray, Malcolm Brogdon, and many more were taken after Henry Ellenson. And then in the 2017 draft, Luke Kennard was taken with, I don't remember where Luke Kennard was drafted, but he was drafted before Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, John Collins, Jarrett Allen, OG Anunoby, Kyle Kuzma, and Josh Hart. Now again, like I said, it's very easy for teams to miss on a draft pick. It's one of the most popular things that NBA franchises do, is miss on a first-round draft pick. At the same time, the names that they did take compared to the names that they didn't take and where those names have blossomed within their respective NBA careers. Like I said, it makes what is going on in Detroit a little bit more sad than it is. And what's worse is that their last two NBA first round draft picks, Sekou Doumbouya and Killian Hayes, even though they don't have a lot of, star names that have been taken after them in the draft, neither of them have been able to prove themselves as a star from that, their respective draft either. And when you're not getting players that, affect your franchise in a positive way, it, like I've said already, it's just terrible for your franchise. Now, if you notice, I did not mention the 2018 NBA draft because the Detroit Pistons actually did not have their pick. Because of the Blake Griffin trade that they pulled off with the Los Angeles Clippers in 2017 or 2018, I can't remember exactly what year, they did not have their first round pick. And their first round pick ended up conveying into the number 4 overall pick. And in the 2018 draft, the number 4 overall pick was Jaren Jackson Jr. There were names like Trae Young and many other guys taken after that pick as well. So that, you could honestly just add that on to the bad draft decisions for the Detroit Pistons as well. The terrible decisions stem outside of the NBA draft as well, as they decided that this year they were not going to pay Christian Wood the $14 million a year contract that he was seeking in free agency, just because of the fact that he had kind of burst on the scene like late last year, and $41 million as a total was a little bit out of their comfort range for paying somebody like Christian Wood. However, they felt very comfortable paying Mason Plumlee $8 million a year and giving Josh Jackson $10 million in free agency this past season as well. And the ultimate crux that has put the Detroit Pistons over in the NBA as being the worst franchise is the recent rumors between them and Blake Griffin of them trying to buy him out of his contract. And it's not really the fact that they're buying him out of the contract that is bad for them. It's the move that they should try to make, and it's the move that Blake Griffin should want to have made. But it just makes a callback to the trade. You traded the number 4 overall pick that ended up being Jaren Jackson. They traded a all-star snub in Tobias Harris, a very solid player in Avery Bradley, who technically won a ring with the Los Angeles Lakers last year, and a fan favorite guy in Boban Marjanovic, who, for a team like the Detroit Pistons, having somebody like Boban Marjanovic on your team at least gives your fans somebody to root for. And other guys like Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley were two very good players for the Pistons, and they shipped them off as well as that number 4 overall pick for a guy in Blake Griffin who has played, I believe, less than 82 games for the Detroit Pistons. If not, it's like 100 or something like that in 3 years. And it's just the cherry on top in terms of the Detroit Pistons being the worst franchise in sports. With all of that being said, that's going to be the video from me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you all at this point is much appreciated. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're one of my returning subscribers, I appreciate you so much. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.